Hi there and welcome along. A job that needs to be done over the next few weeks out in the garden is something that I normally leave until just after the festive period. However, a quick inspection out in the garden just goes to show that the season is already quite well advanced. And in front of me I've got one of my hellebores. I absolutely love hellebores. I've got them planted everywhere in the garden, not only in beds and borders, but like this one, dotted around in really random places. This one is over by some of the raised beds. Behind me is just a cold frame and a large water butt here. So an area of the garden that I'm in and out of a lot of time. It's one of those working areas of the garden that sees me walking about an awful lot. And this particular hellebore gets an awful lot of attention during the months of February, March and April. This particular one is already, as you can see, if I pick up the camera and point it down, you can still start to see it's already sending out nice new growth for the season ahead. And what we need to do now is we need to remove these older leaves, and we do this for several reasons. I'm going to cut one as I talk to you about why we do this. Most importantly, leaves on hellebores can stay on the plants for between 12 and 15 months. They get really quite old, and you can see if I bring these close to the camera, they're very leathery, they're very strong, and they are very prone to picking up things like rust and fungal spores. And you can see the outer edges of this particular leaves already covered in fungal spores and rust. Now this is not a huge problem for this particular plant. It's absolutely fine, and we'll rebuff this quite nicely. The leaves over a period of time will simply die off and they can be removed. However, at this time of year, the reason why we're growing hellebores is to enjoy those wonderful bell-like, dainty, hanging, beautiful flowers, which incidentally are covered in lots and lots of iridescent and ultraviolet markings. They're actually pollinated by moths, which use the small freckles and markings on the flowers to navigate their way through to the actual nectar and the pollen pollinating the plant. Many of the flowers that actually flower at this time of year during the winter months are actually pollinated by flying pollinating moths, and not by bees and other pollinating insects that you might normally associate with pollination, like wasps and bees, etc. So it's a really good idea to remove all of the old growth, but you must make sure your hellebore, like the one in front of me, has started already to send up that lovely fresh new growth, which of course will bear flowers known as the Christmas rose over the coming weeks and months as we head into January, February, March and through into April. So it's a good idea to remove these because they're covered in pathogens and fungal spores, which will only re-inflect the new growth as it comes through, and obviously get in the way of that lovely show that you have in the garden over the coming weeks. So what we need to do is we just need to take a sharp pair of secateurs, and we need to very carefully work around the plant. Let's move you so you can possibly see a little bit more of what I'm doing. Just work your way around the plant and remove as many of those old leaves as possible. They're just here. I'm going to chuck them in a bucket, and they need to head off to the incinerator or the compost heap, whichever you prefer, but they need to be removed completely at this time of year so you can really see that lovely fresh growth and those fresh flowers that are going to be coming over in the next couple of weeks. Leaving the plant nice and clear. Everything there is nice and tidy. I'm just going to pick you up and show you quickly before I move you around. You can see all nice and tidy there, that lovely growth already coming through. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to give this plant a thoroughly good mulch. I'm going to give it a couple of really good handfuls of fresh organic soil conditioner or homemade garden compost, well rotted horse manure or leaf mulch. This plant is going to be hungry over the coming weeks and months as it not only produces lots of lovely new growth, lots of lovely new leaves, but also loads and loads of flowers in the weeks to come. So I'm going to give it a thoroughly good mulch. Incidentally, if you wanted to lift and divide your hellebores, the best time to do that is just after they've actually gone through flowering. So they're going to be flowering over the Christmas period through to the back end of February and March, and at that particular point in time, just as they're starting to set seed, that's the perfect window and time to actually get them lifted and actually dig them up and actually move them out in the garden. You can lift them with your spade and then simply slice them in half, replant half in the original planting pocket with plenty of compost and fresh growing media, and then move the other part over somewhere else in the garden, or give it away as a gift to a fellow gardening buddy. Obviously, hellebores are expensive plants, costing anywhere between sort of 15 and 30 pounds per piece. So buying them and then buying them smaller and dividing them at a later point in time is a really cost-effective way of filling your garden, especially if you've got varieties that you really like and enjoy in the garden. Please don't divide any herbaceous perennials in the garden. There's a wider topic right now in the garden. Plants sat in cold, wet and often frosted soil during the winter months have a tendency to rot. You want to be dividing your herbaceous perennials anywhere between from the end of February all the way through to the end of March, beginning of April, when they're starting to be actively growing and produce roots and actively producing growth above ground. Then and only then are you really safe to really lift things and actually start dividing things. Otherwise, sat in cold, wet soil during the winter months, they're likely to actually rot and reduce the number of plants that you have rather than actually increasing them. It's a job I'm going to pop around in the garden and do now. I've got loads and loads of hellebores, probably about 2 dozen to go around in the garden and do. So do get out in the garden over the next couple of weeks. And if your hellebore is slightly more advanced in this, all you need to do is just be very, very careful with your secateurs or your fruit nose pruners, whatever it is that you're using to take these leaves off. Just make sure you get in between those new growth tips and cut the old leaves away and discard them and say off to the compost heap or the incinerator. Anyway, I'll see you all again very soon. Take good care now. Bye bye.